I can admit when I'm wrong and when I screw up, and well, it's my fault we blew it up. What's up, YouTubians? Gary, VWJawbreaker. Welcome back to a gloomy, hot, muggy Florida day. Gotta love it. So today we are back on the 1968. No. We already finished that engine, dum-dum. We're back to we're back to work on the 1760cc engine build for Jawbreaker. That's right. We're bringing the car back eventually. Seems like things take forever, but it is what it is. So where are we at? Well, we got the short block done, we got the long block done, and then I found a paint color for the tint. This is pretty cool. Yeah, without further ado, bam! We went with blue. We got a blue pulley. That doesn't match, but believe it or not, kind of looks good with Jawbreaker. I mean, you know, the car does have some blues in it, 2 different color blues. So, started painting up some tins. Still trying to figure out the whole fan shroud thing, but yeah, looking forward to getting this thing fired up. We're getting close, guys. We're getting real close. And in this video, we will do the cam break-in and see if it blows up. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I just do things. And you guys are here for the ride, so I appreciate you being here. So one thing I get asked is, Gary, why are you doing a spare parts engine build? Man, have you seen the economy? Things are not cheap. I can't afford to sit there and throw all that kind of money out there and build a brand new engine. I mean, it'd be nice, but why not take parts that are still good and put them back in service? Another common question, why a 1760? Because we're doing a spare parts engine build and that's what I had laying around. So what makes it a 1760cc? Well, it's close enough for government work, but it's basic math, that's what it is. Basically, we took a 1600 87mm pistons would make it a 1641. Okay, well that's a 1641, not a 1760. You're right. But if we take that stock 69mm crank out and put a 74mm stroke crank, makes it a 1760. Yeah, it would have been nice to step up the cam and a few other things, but you know, we're trying to keep this budget friendly. Used parts, spare engine parts build. Things that you can do at home. So that's why it has a stock cam. It's going to be running a stock single carburetor. Just has some nice flowing heads from VW Darren and a stroker crank. Other than that, it's a regular stock 1641. So again, using the right rods, little minor case clearancing, and you too can have a small stroker. We learned that on this 1968 build. If you use the proper rods, you barely have to do any clearancing whatsoever to drop a 74 in a stock case. Good to know. Use stock rods. You're gonna have to do as much clearancing as we did here back in the first or second episode. All right, well, let's start diving in. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start off with the oil cooler and oil cooler doghouse adapter. So this is a doghouse fan. I'll show you why. We've got our pack of O-rings. We've got our gaskets, our metal gaskets, alternator stand, and of course our fuel pump assembly. So we're gonna go ahead and get all of that on top of the engine and then go ahead and drop on our other head tin, and then we'll go from there. All right, to put your oil cooler on, you're gonna have a couple different O-rings in here, or O-rings, gaskets, whatever you wanna call them. You got a couple different sizes. So you need to ensure that you're using the right one. So if you notice, this one here has a smaller hole in it than this one. So you don't wanna use this one. You should have 4 of this size. That's the size we need to use for this particular oil cooler. So we'll go ahead and take our nuts off. Now all you're going to do is just drop that in place. Take our oil cooler, which was generously donated along with the oil cooler adapter. Believe it or not, some simple clean and some scrub brush, and that thing turned out beautiful. So you want to make sure that those sit right there in those holes, just like so. And all we need to do is just kind of snug it up. You don't crank them tight, you just snug them up. Again, you're not making it super tight, you're just snugging it up. It doesn't take a crap ton of pressure. And that's it. You now have that done. So now we'll go ahead and go drop these on the case and install our oil cooler. Same thing, we're going to drop those down in place. They sit in the hole flush. You don't have to force them in. and just drop your oil cooler in place. I do not recommend using nylock nuts, especially for these undersides. It's going to be a pain to get those tightened up. Ask me how I know. Take your washer, your nut. So if you were replacing oil cooler seals, this is how you'd be doing it. And again, with the head tent on this side, with that one on, it's pretty much impossible to get to them. You can, it's just easier this way. So pull your fan shroud, pull your head tin, and you'll be done. Now it's just a matter of snugging them up. They don't go much. I think book calls 5 foot-pounds. It's not much at all. So just a good snug is all you need. Finger snug those. And the same thing, about 5 foot-pounds. So just snugging it up good. Double check them, make sure you got them. That's it. Oil cooler is done. Let's move on. All right, next up, let's go and get the fuel pump done. So we've got our Brussels fuel pump. Comes with the gaskets. Make sure you get the proper fuel pump rod because there's 2 different lengths. One for alternator, one for generator. And of course, we've got our lovely little flange here that we need to use. So one thing I like to do is set this in the case and make sure it drops in and you don't have to force it. Because if you have to force it and remove this later, good luck, it's going to break off down below. So what we can do if we need to is sand this part right here a little bit. So let's swing it around, drop it in the case and see how it does. So we'll just drop this down in there. Yep, see, it's really tight. You don't want to do that. So you can take some sandpaper or something and you can see right there where it's rubbing. So we'll take and just kind of clean all that up some and then try it again. A little bit more. There we go. Drops right down in there nice. So now it's time to go ahead and clean some gaskets up and get to gluing. Alright, first gasket's got a little bit of sealant on it. Use your sealant of choice. I like black RTV. You do you. Then we've got a little bit on the bottom side of this. And I just realized the studs are not tall enough, so extract those studs out a little bit. Take part of a paper towel, put it in there so we don't drop anything down in the hole, into the case. Thread on one nut, throw on a second nut. Now that it's double nutted, use the bottom one. And you can raise that up higher. So those studs are not long enough. I gotta look, see if we have different studs. Well, I should have checked that first, but it is what it is. So what we pulled out is a lot more of like a exhaust stud size. These are fuel pump studs. See how you got a big gap in between? So you run it into the case to about there, and then you've still got plenty of room for everything else. Oops, my bad. Again, if you double nut it, you can pull it out of there. So I'll go ahead and get the other one pulled, drop these in, and then we'll get back to the fuel pump. All right, studs are replaced. We've got the proper ones in now. Whoops. Replace the gasket because I kind of nicked it. Figured why not just replace it. Dig our little paper towel out of there. It's a good thing I put it there because I dropped a nut. We've got some sealant on the back side of our phenolic spacer here. Drop that down. Come on, get in the hole. There we go. Now I like to take a little bit of oil, put it on my rod, just so it helps lubricate, dropping down in. Boink! And I have no idea where I heard this from before, but if you take a little bit of grease and put it in there, it's supposed to help. I don't know. Sounds good. Now we'll take our other gasket, a little bit of sealant, drop that down in place. There we go. Now we can take our fuel pump with a little bit of sealant on it and drop it down in place as well. Now we'll just kind of push it down a little bit, get a washer on there, get a nut on there. Same thing on the back side. Washer in a nut. I'm using nylocks, use whatever you want. Stainless nylock, so they're not the soft ones that come in the engine kit case. Then again, not that big of a deal on this. You're not having high pressure, a lot of force or anything. All right, now we'll just take a wrench and snug her on up. Doesn't have to be tight, just snug. There we go, fuel pump's done. So now we'll go ahead and move on to the alternator stand. All right, for our alternator stand, it's actually pretty simple. We're gonna have one gasket, sealant of choice, face down. Now we have our oil deflector plate. It goes on like that, with these parts facing down, and its openings are facing your head tin. All right, again, sealant of choice on the back. Then your other gasket, sealant of choice on the back of that one. And then your alternator or generator stand. And throw on some washers. And our pretty nuts. What is it with e-bikes? People just riding around on e-bikes. It's like you're not getting any exercise. They're not even pedaling, they're just driving around on e-bikes. To each their own, I guess. Now you can just go ahead and snug it on up. I like to kind of crisscross a little bit. This back one over here, you're going to have to use a wrench on, but these other three, you can actually get a ratchet on. And just snug it. You don't need it super tight. And again, we'll throw a wrench on this one. All right, that's done. Woohoo! All right, might as well go ahead and throw the other head tin on. Get these head tins on at least. Get our wires out the way. Kind of just drops down over. Hold on, pull your spark plugs. Dude. Look at that, now it fits. I just have them kind of threaded in a few threads just to keep stuff out, debris out. I like to pull them out when I go to turn it over and build oil pressure. I like using these button head style bolts. Use what you like. Well, that was pretty easy. We got our head tins on, oil cooler, fuel pump, alternator stand. So now I need to worry about fan shroud. I'll figure it out, don't worry, because I've already got the alternator and backing plate sitting there. Backing plate's already painted up. That's ready to go. We also have a fan for the alternator. Really, fan shroud, hope to have that sorted out this week. And then we can go ahead and get the fan shroud fixed up, painted, get that on, get the other stuff assembled. I've already got the intake, end castings, carburetor, coil. We're real close. Let me go find a fan shroud. I'll be right back. All right, I'm out here after work. Let's try to get a couple things done so we can get this cam break-in done even faster. Found the fan shroud. It's drying, so let's go ahead and assemble the fan onto the alternator so we can get all this assembled. So here we go. You've got your little funky wavy washer. You've got your hub and nut and a couple alternator shims, and that's what's going to hold your fan onto your alternator. So I'll set you up real quick and we'll knock that out. So just make sure you got your little keyway in right there. Take your hub, the square part is going to be facing out because that's what's going to lock into your fan. Sometimes the keyway likes to move, so just be careful. There it goes. Fan, actually, I usually have to put 1 or 2 shims back there to shim it. So we'll do that to start, and we'll put it on and see how she does. Put the wavy washer, put the curve like that out. Take your nut, and that's 36 millimeter, just like your gland nut. And then give it a couple ugga-duggas. That's it. Now we can go ahead and spin this, and it's not hitting on the backing plate, so we can go ahead and set it in the fan shroud and see if it hits on that. That's where your shims come into play to be able to adjust the fan back and forth. All right, we'll take our fan assembly, drop it in, line up your holes. Sounds like we're probably gonna have to shim it some more. The only way to know for sure is to tighten it up. Set it up. Alright, maybe we just need 1 shim back there. So I'll go ahead and take this apart and remove 1 shim. Alright, well, with the shims removed, let's try it again. That's what I'm talking about. Alright, so I removed 1 shim on the inside, put it on the outside in between the fan and that big wavy washer, just to help take up the slack, and it helps keep everything nice and solid. So there we go. There we go. Fan shroud is on. I forgot to hit record, my bad. Make sure you put your little nuts on both sides. Use an actual bolt. That way if you're running dual carburetors, you can actually get to it. Don't use one of those pan head screws right there. Regular 10 screws. Let's see. When you set it on, spin it. Make sure that it's not rubbing. And then with these MST pulleys, you can actually run a straight edge across it and verify that everything is nice and straight. Now with this tensioner, this is not one of the spring-loaded ones, so you actually have to tighten it right there. I think it's like a 6mm Allen. Thing is, that doesn't move. I like my belt a little loose. You don't want those real tight. They will ruin your alternator and also the front nose bearing on your case. So do not, for the love of God, make this super tight. This will slip less than a stock V-belt. That's why you want to run it a little loose. Ask me how I know. I've seen things. I've heard things. Let me bring you up to speed. I've got a lot done. We are this close. Hold on, check this out. So I know it's a little dark. You know, I've got the garage barely open because the sun beats in the afternoons, but I've been coming out here getting some work done here and there, you know, when I have time after work. So we've got fan shroud on, we got the pulleys on. Remember, we did the loose belt, don't bring it tight, but intake's on, carb's on. Clean the jets, I didn't pull the carb apart. Exhaust is on. That's actually the original exhaust that came on Jawbreaker when I bought the car. Pretty cool. It's going full circle. We've got our full flow set up temporarily on. This is a bracket that you put, basically it bolts in your fender where your rear bumper goes, and then, you know, you bolt your housing there. This is actually sideways. It goes different, but it works for this. No, the lines are not touching. Full flow setup. So these are push lock fittings. So those aren't regular fittings that you would use for AN lines, and then this is just regular 3/4 inch hose. So this is 3/8 NTP to 8 AN to 3/4 line, so it's a nice flow all the way through. These are 3/8 NTP 90s, you know, with the swooping ones. One thing I want to say real quick on that, let's go to the bench, is on the inside of the fittings, I used a Dremel and kind of cleaned it up, right? So I just sat there with like a little tiny burr, little hogger, whatever you want to call it. And I'll put a picture in right now, but as you see on one side, you know, the casting was there and it didn't have a nice flow. And then the other side, you can see where I've really cleaned things up a lot. So those AN fittings, I get them all from Jegs because they're actually a good quality. You really can't go wrong with it. You know, and it's got like 2 barbs on it, so it actually holds in real good because it's a push lock. They're designed for that, but they're designed for more of a, what do you want to call it, a different line. It's basically the same, but different, right? The push lock hose. And then you use like a pinch clamp here instead of a worm clamp. I use worm clamp, but this makes it a lot easier to be able to pull your fittings off and on and your lines off and on. And then if you want, they have like these female style caps and male caps. You can actually pull a line, cap it, and not lose a bunch of oil and keep things from going inside and getting contaminated, whatever. We are so stinking close right now. We really are. Oh, another thing. Intakes. Use the metal intake gaskets if you are running a center carburetor because you want that heat transfer from the head into the intakes to help keep the fuel in suspension. Now, I do not have the heat risers hooked up on this. The reason being is they are cut off on these, so I'm gonna have to get something to figure that out later, or a different exhaust or something, but we'll get that figured out. What else am I forgetting to tell you? I mean, I've just been like 10 minutes here, 20 minutes here, 5 minutes there, you know, in the evenings after work, just trying to get this thing done. I want to hear this thing run. Before you comment this, no, I do not run Fram filters. I have that Fram filter because I got it from somebody a long time ago, and it's like a backup type of filter. I normally run these man filters. I've had excellent luck with them. They have like internal bypass in them. You can get these on Amazon, but this is the Fram filter that somebody gave me, and well, I just figured it'd be great for break-in. Now, for break-in purposes, technically, because this cam and lifters were in a different engine, and I marked the lifters to their corresponding holes, put them back where they belong, technically, we don't have to do a cam break-in. But what fun is it not to do a cam break-in? I mean, that's the whole point of the stress of a build, right? Sit there and see what's gonna fail, what's gonna happen. So we're gonna do a shorter cam break-in. Normally you wanna hold it at 2,500 RPMs for about 20 minutes. Vary your RPM a little bit and stuff. That way, you know, you can get the oil splashing in there and lubricating and keeping everything nice and good. So we'll probably go for about 10 minutes and just kind of see how it is. We'll bring you through the process. So unfortunately, right this minute, we're not going to be firing it up. Well, I mean, it's going to be in about 15 seconds for you, but I've got to wait. Literally, put fuel in it, build oil pressure, and we're ready to light this thing off. We are that close. One thing, hold on. The oil filter is already pre-filled, so I already have oil in that. I took my line here that comes off of my pump, held it up, and backfilled oil into the pump to help prime. Now, if you remember, I put a little bit of grease in there to help the gears grab something to prime when you first, when you first fire it up, or build oil pressure before you fire it up. Technically, I like to do it that way. Another way you can do it is you can pour oil into your relief valve. Sorry, not your relief valve. Pour oil into where your oil cooler goes and goes up to the front. Or right here, your pressure sender, you can throw some in there. It'll actually backfeed and go down into that side. However, for us, we can't do it here because we blocked it off in the case for the full flow setup. So it's easier on a full flow setup. Just backfeed it through here. Literally, I just held it up and poured oil down it until that line filled up. I already pre-filled this. Put oil in the thing, put fuel to it. We'll build oil pressure. Once the oil pressure is built, we'll go ahead and stick our plugs in there, put that on. We're gonna light this baby off and see how it does. So, it's gonna be a few seconds for you, but unfortunately I'm gonna wait a couple days. So, see you here in a second. Well, the clouds went away, but as soon as I come out here to record, they come back. Thanks, clouds. So, pardon the glares. 60 works great as a workbench, thank goodness. It is now time to go ahead and fire this bad boy up. So, I've got oil in it and already a small oil leak. The sump cover plate right here, center bolt stripped out, so not much I can do about that right now. Not going to drain the oil out to go ahead and replace that real fast, so we'll just let it drip a little, no big deal. Everything's hooked up, ready to go. So we've got our little start bell housing assembly thing on here. This is a cut bell housing. I did a video on this a long while back, but it's a cut bell housing from a transmission, so I can bolt the starter up. Little start box. I've got the oil pressure gauge sitting here, ready to go. No plugs in it right now because I want to build oil pressure and prime the fuel pump. So we're going to turn it over until we get fuel pressure and oil pressure, and then we'll go ahead and put the plugs in. Now, something I got asked on static timing. I do not technically static time it with a timing light. Ooh. What I do is I verify that we are top dead center, and I rotate the cap and rotor so they line up perfect, and it gets you pretty close to top dead center. You'll have to tweak it a tad, but that's just what I do. It's quick, easy, and that's just how I do things. So I'm gonna go ahead and get you set up, and we'll go ahead and get this thing fired up. Well, I mean, build oil pressure first, then fire it up. Let's do it. Master switch on, we're not running the coil. Hit the starter and check out the oil pressure. I like it. All right, let's check the oil level, put in some plugs, hook the timing light up, and we should be ready to go. Hey, yeah! All right, we've double checked our oil. We've got our plugs in, verified our firing order. Should be about good. I've got the wire disconnected to the choke so we don't accidentally shut the choke off, because I want to use that choke to be able to hold the throttle open some. So let's see if we have fuel. We got fuel. Fire in the hole, I guess. I'd love to kind of take you over there and show you, but can only have you in one spot at a time. All right, here we go. we got a gusher. And this is what happens. So, dripping from up top there. This is no bueno, man. So that's probably the oil cooler seals. Oh yeah, look at it right there. Oh, it's the oil cooler. Son of a gun. You can see the oil dripping right there. Oh, oil everywhere. All right, well, on the plus side, it runs. Now I gotta find a new oil cooler. I've never had that happen before. That's a brand new oil cooler. All right, I'll bring you back. And we're back. I'm man enough to say when I mess up, because you know what? I'm not an expert. I just know enough. Speaking of that, there's a new shirt that says that on VWJawbreaker.com, but it's my fault we blew the engine up. Okay, well, we didn't blow the engine up, we blew the oil cooler. Ah, see? We blew the oil cooler. So, I got everything fixed, we got everything back together. Here's what the problem was. So, you've got two different style oil relief plugs. This one here is the earlier style that is for the single relief case. This goes in the rear part of the engine by the pulley. Okay, problem is you don't use these on these dual relief cases. You use the regular round one without that groove and the extra tall one. Yeah, that's extra tall. I'll put a picture in here to show you a difference between the grooved plunger and the regular plunger. So you take this extra long plunger with a stupid booster spring, which I thought wasn't a booster spring, and guess what? Between the two of those together, you have no chance of this going down far enough to relieve the pressure. That's what happened. We built way too much pressure and we blew this oil cooler. You live and learn, right? This is, I think, the only mistake I've ever made. I mean, off the top of my head, so could be worse, right? All right, so we got the glaring sun again, so pardon me for all of that, but we're gonna go ahead and get this thing fired up and try this again. I'm gonna put you over here this time so we can keep an eye on the oil pressure gauge. Hopefully you can see that in the video. We got our fuel on, we got our battery hooked up, everything's hooked up, timing light's sitting there, power's on. Let's go ahead and give her a couple pumps. Coil on. Let's try it this time. Fire the hole. It's alive. I am so not going to argue with that. I'm still going to dial the carb in a little bit. Timing's pretty much dead on. This one's idling right around 8 degrees, 9 degrees, and advancing to about 29, almost 30. So spot on. Oil pressure, much better. So changing out the springs and the plunger, that's what that needed. We are good. So all I was doing to kind of dial things in is your top screw right there is your air bypass, your bottom screw is your mixture. So you got to kind of run, the more you back this one out, higher your RPM is going to be. Then of course you just kind of run your mixture screw in until it starts to bog, back it back out until it smooths out. That's how you set your lean best idle in this situation. So, man, she sounded good. Belt was a smidge loose. I actually, when I put everything back together, I forgot to actually tighten it back up, but I wasn't going to shut it down for that. She's alive, not a drop. Slight tick, which that's fine because, you know, we still got to go in and adjust the valves after the break-in. But that was a full 10 minutes. She ran beautifully. The reason she was shaking some is the choke was half closed, so it was running a little leaner. Temps were great. One thing I do is I like to kind of shoot it right about here on the head and kind of see what your head temp is here on all 4 sides. And then I shoot the case temperature here, somewhere right in this range here, to kind of see what your engine case temperature is. It's just a simple little infrared thermometer, nothing fancy, but that's what I use. So there we go. It's alive. So next, I gotta pull the overland trailer out, get a few things buttoned up on that because it's almost camping season again, even though I'm standing here sweating. And then we'll finally dig Jawbreaker out, get the 60 and Jawbreaker side by side, slap this motor in it, and then we got suspension work, floor pans to fix, seats to find to put in. We got some stuff to do, but don't worry. I appreciate you guys sticking around for these. It means a lot to me. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Drop a comment of what your favorite part was about this. Did it excite you to go out and work on your stuff? Well, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping I can help inspire you. Get out there and work on your projects. Do me a favor, subscribe if you haven't. Costs nothing, and it helps the channel out. Little things like that is what helps us grow. So, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sticking around. We'll catch you on the next one real soon. Till then, be kind to one another and be good.